My name is Margaret Foster, and I am 73 years old. I've lived a full life, raised two sons, taught piano for 40 years, and buried a husband I thought I knew. But on a crisp October morning, headed to the airport for my sister's birthday in Portland, I realized I'd forgotten Richard's will at home. Richard had passed 6 months earlier. Heart attack. Quick and painless, the doctors said. We'd been married for 45 years. I turned my car around, hands trembling slightly on the wheel. The will was important. I needed it for the estate lawyer that week. Our house sat quiet on Maple Street. The garden Richard had tended now overgrown with autumn leaves. I parked in the driveway and walked to the front door. That's when I heard voices coming from inside. My son Thomas's voice, and his wife Rebecca. I paused, key halfway to the lock. Mom won't even notice, Thomas said. His voice carried that edge he got when he wanted something. She's getting forgetful. We just need to guide her toward the retirement home. Once she sells the house, we can. Your brother will fight us, Rebecca interrupted. Daniel actually cares about her. Daniel lives in Seattle. He visits twice a year. We're here. We're the ones who'll handle everything. My hand froze. The key felt heavy, cold. The inheritance is substantial, Rebecca continued. Your father was smart with his investments. If we can convince her the house is too much work, too many memories, she'll downsize. Maybe even move in with us for a while. Then we help her make better financial decisions. Thomas finished. For her own good. I stood there on my own porch, listening to my son plot against me. Thomas, my firstborn, the boy I'd rocked through nightmares, the teenager I'd defended when he crashed the car, the man I'd watched marry the woman he loved, or thought he loved. I backed away silently, returned to my car, and sat there for 20 minutes breathing. Then I drove to my lawyer's office instead of the airport. Robert Chun had handled Richard's estate. He was a kind man, perhaps 60, with silver-rimmed glasses and a gentle manner. But when I told him what I'd heard, his expression hardened. Margaret, I'm sorry, he said, but I need to tell you something about Richard's will. My stomach dropped. There's a clause he added 2 years ago. A substantial trust, nearly $2 million, set aside specifically for Thomas. Richard never told you because. He paused, looking uncomfortable. Because Thomas had asked him not to. Why? Thomas had gambling debts. Significant ones. Richard paid them off quietly, then established this trust to protect Thomas from himself. It pays out in installments, but only if certain conditions are met. Steady employment, no legal troubles, and this is important demonstrated care for you. I sat back. Richard knew. Knew what? That Thomas would need. Incentive. To be a good son. Robert nodded slowly. Richard loved Thomas, but he wasn't blind. The trust was his way of protecting both of you. I didn't go to Portland. I called my sister, apologized, and spent the weekend thinking .by Monday. I had a plan. I called Thomas and asked him to lunch. He arrived cheerful, giving me a hug that felt hollow now that I knew what lived behind it. Mom, you look tired, he said, all concern. This house is a lot for you, isn't it? Actually, Thomas, I wanted to talk to you about that. His eyes lit up. I've been thinking the same thing. Rebecca and I have been talking, about how we could help. Maybe you should consider something smaller, more manageable. A retirement home? I asked gently. He had the grace to look slightly ashamed. Well, not necessarily, but maybe a condo. Something with less upkeep. I sipped my tea. And what would happen to this house? We'd sell it, of course. Put the money somewhere safe for you. Somewhere you could access it. His face flushed. I don't know what you're implying. I heard you, Thomas. Last Friday, I came home and heard you and Rebecca planning how to separate me from my home and my money. The color drained from his face, then returned, hot and angry. You were spying on me. In my own house. I was retrieving your father's will, which coincidentally contains some interesting provisions you should know about. I told him about the trust, about the conditions, about how his father had known Thomas struggled with money, with impulse control, with putting himself first. Dad thought I was a failure. Thomas said bitterly. No, I said firmly. Your father thought you were human, flawed, like all of us. But he also believed you could be better. That's why the trust has conditions. He was giving you a reason to try. Thomas stood up. So what now? You cut me off, punish me for one conversation. No, I said. I'm going to do something your father would have done. I'm going to give you a choice. The choice was simple. Thomas could walk away from me, from the family, from the trust. He'd get nothing from Richard's estate except his legal minimum, or he could stay. genuinely stay. Visit weekly. Help with the real things, the stuck windows, the confusing medical bills, the loneliness of widowhood. Earn the trust his father had set aside. Earn back my trust. And if I try, and you still don't believe me, he asked, then you'll. No, you tried, I said. That's all anyone can do. He left without answering. 3 days later, Thomas showed up with groceries. I didn't know what you needed, he said awkwardly. So I just bought what you usually get. I let him in. Over the following months, something shifted. Thomas came by on Saturdays. Sometimes he brought Rebecca, who apologized stiffly, but sincerely. They fixed the gutters, organized the garage, and stayed for dinner. One evening, Thomas helped me hang pictures old family photos I'd been meaning to display. He paused at one of him as a little boy, gap-toothed and grinning. On Richard's shoulders. I miss him, Thomas said quietly. I was angry at him for a long time, for seeing my failures when I wanted him to see my successes. He saw both, I said. He just worried about you, the way parents do. I'm sorry, Mom, for planning. For what I said. I was thinking about money when I should have been thinking about you. I touched his arm. Your father's trust wasn't about money either. It was about faith. He had faith you'd figure it out. A year later, I still live in the house on Maple Street. Thomas visits most Saturdays. We've developed a routine. He handles the heavy work. I make lunch, we talk. Rebecca is pregnant now. They asked if I'd want to help with childcare. I said yes. Daniel, my younger son, visits more often too. Thomas called him after our confrontation, told him everything. They've grown closer, the two of them, united in making up for lost time. I think about Richard's trust, often not the money, but the wisdom behind it. He knew people need reasons to be their best selves. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes we need structure, consequences, incentives. But always underneath faith. Faith that people can change. Faith that betrayal isn't the end. Faith that families can heal. I'm 74 now. My hands aren't as steady as they were, and I've stopped teaching piano. But I still play, usually in the evenings when the house is quiet. Last week, Thomas sat with me while I played one of Richard's favorites, Claire de Lune. When I finished, Thomas said, Dad used to sit exactly where I'm sitting. He'd close his eyes and just listen. He loved music, I said, almost as much as he loved you. He loved you more, Thomas said. That's why he made sure you'd be protected. Even from me, I didn't argue. Richard had protected me, but in his wisdom, he'd also protected Thomas from himself, from his worst impulses, from a future filled with regret. That's what love does. It sees as clearly, flaws and all, and chooses to believe in our better angels. The house on Maple Street isn't just mine anymore. It's become something else, a place where my granddaughter will take her first steps, where Thomas is learning to be the man his father believed he could be, where I'm learning that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the hardest kind of strength. And every evening, when I play the piano, I imagine Richard sitting in his favorite chair, eyes closed, listening, believing, still believing, always believing in us.